For centuries, historians have grappled with the fall of Rome, an event so monumental it marks a historical epoch. But the concept of Rome, its law, its language, its engineering, has persisted. This persistent legacy prompts a profound question: what if the Roman Empire, in its western and eastern halves, had never collapsed? What kind of world would we inhabit today? Our investigation will delve into this alternate reality, scrutinizing how an unbroken Roman Empire might have shaped politics, technology, language, religion, warfare, trade, borders, and urban development. Historically, the Western Roman Empire's collapse was not a single, dramatic event, but a complex, centuries-long process of decline, fragmentation, and transformation, culminating in 476 CE with the deposition of Emperor Romulus Augustulus. This process, as documented by historians like Edward Gibbon, involved a confluence of factors: economic instability, overstretched military, internal political strife, and the pressures of barbarian incursions along its vast frontiers. This is our baseline, the reality from which our hypothetical future diverges. We must first understand the reality to build the what-if. Crucially, the Eastern Roman Empire, often referred to as Byzantium, did survive for another 1,000 years, preserving Roman law, Greek philosophy, and Christian theology. This historical fact, often overlooked when discussing the fall of Rome, provides a tangible example of Roman resilience and adaptation. The East, with its more defensible capital at Constantinople, its richer provinces, and a more centralized administration, weathered many of the storms that overwhelmed its western counterpart. This demonstrates that Rome could adapt and continue, albeit in a different form. For our what-if scenario, we postulate a key divergence: that the political and economic reforms attempted by emperors like Diocletian and Constantine proved more fundamentally successful and enduring. Imagine a scenario where the administrative division into East and West, initially a pragmatic solution, evolved into a more integrated, federal structure rather than a precursor to permanent schism. This foundational shift would require stronger institutional mechanisms for imperial succession, greater fiscal stability, and a more adaptable military doctrine capable of integrating or repelling external threats more effectively than in our timeline. In an enduring empire, the fundamental political question would be centralization versus decentralization. Historians like A.H.M. Jones detailed the vast imperial bureaucracy, suggesting a unified Rome might have evolved into a highly federalized system, perhaps akin to a vast European Union with a dominant central authority, or a collection of semi-autonomous kingdoms under an imperial emperor. The Roman legal tradition, a cornerstone of its power, would likely provide the framework for these relationships, establishing precedents for local governance while maintaining imperial oversight. One of Rome's perennial weaknesses was the chaotic nature of imperial succession. In our alternate timeline, a stable empire would necessitate a formalized, perhaps even constitutional, mechanism for transferring power. This could range from an established hereditary system, perhaps within a designated imperial dynasty, to an elective monarchy involving the Senate and senior military figures, preventing the barracks emperors phenomenon. The stability fostered by such a system would reduce internal strife, allowing resources to be directed towards development rather than civil war, a stark contrast to historical realities. Roman law, codified notably under Justinian in the Eastern Empire, already possessed a remarkable capacity for adaptation and detailed jurisprudence. In a continuous empire, this legal system would have continued its evolution, perhaps incorporating elements of provincial customs while maintaining its fundamental principles. This persistent legal framework would underpin trade, property rights, and interprovincial relations, providing a bedrock of stability. It might even have developed a complex system of international law, given Rome's enduring presence on the global stage, anticipating modern legal constructs by centuries. Historically, Roman technological advancements were often practical, focused on engineering and infrastructure, rather than theoretical science. The question arises, would a continuous empire foster further innovation or lead to stagnation due to a lack of competitive pressure? Some historians argue that the availability of slave labor hindered the development of labor-saving devices. However, the sophisticated Roman infrastructure, aqueducts, roads, concrete, suggests a society capable of immense feats. Perhaps the continued need to manage a vast empire would drive efficiency and new solutions. One tantalizing what-if in Roman technology concerns the eolipile, invented by Hero of Alexandria in the 1st century CE, essentially a rudimentary steam engine. Historically, it remained a curiosity. In an enduring empire, with continued pressure for efficient transportation and industry, this invention might have been developed beyond a toy. Imagine steam-powered pumps for mines, or even early steam-driven vessels on Roman rivers and the Mediterranean. This shift could have ignited an industrial revolution centuries ahead of our timeline, transforming Roman society and its economic output dramatically. The Roman world relied on painstakingly copied manuscripts, limiting access to information and slowing the spread of knowledge. While the Chinese developed block printing much earlier, the Roman Empire, if it persisted, might have independently developed mechanical printing, perhaps leveraging advancements in metallurgy and pressure systems. An early printing press could have revolutionized education, governance, and the dissemination of imperial decrees, fostering a more literate populace and a faster exchange of scientific and philosophical ideas. This would drastically accelerate cultural and intellectual development. Historically, Vulgar Latin evolved into the various Romance languages after the collapse of the Western Empire, while Greek remained dominant in the East. In an unbroken Rome, Latin's hold across the entire imperial territory would likely have been far stronger. It would remain the lingua franca of administration, law, and education. While regional dialects and influences from conquered peoples would still exist, the unifying force of Imperial Latin might have prevented the drastic divergence into distinct languages, or at least significantly slowed the process, creating a more linguistically uniform, albeit vast, empire. The enduring dominance of Latin would have profound global implications. English, for example, is heavily influenced by Latin due to the Norman conquest. Without the fall of Rome, and potentially a different development of Germanic languages, the linguistic landscape of Europe would be fundamentally altered. Would Latin become a global language of diplomacy and science, much like English is today? This pervasive linguistic influence could foster greater cultural cohesion across the empire and potentially beyond, impacting how knowledge is shared and how different cultures interact. Historically, Christianity became the dominant religion of the Roman Empire by the 4th century, eventually becoming the state religion. In an unbroken empire, this trajectory would likely continue, solidifying Christianity's hold. However, the nature of this Christianity might be different. Without the schism between East and West, and without the influence of various barbarian kingdoms, a unified Roman Church could have developed with a singular doctrinal authority, perhaps centered in Rome, or even Constantinople. The suppression of paganism would likely be more thorough and widespread across the entire Roman territory. While Christianity would likely dominate, the sheer size and diversity of the empire might necessitate some degree of religious pluralism, even if officially suppressed. Could remnants of paganism, or even other monotheistic faiths like Judaism, persist more openly in certain regions? The historical Roman capacity for syncretism suggests a potential for absorbing or tolerating diverse practices, albeit under the overarching Christian narrative. However, the unified church might also exert significant pressure for uniformity, potentially leading to religious conflicts or state-sanctioned persecutions, shaping the empire's internal social fabric profoundly. The Roman legions, historically, were a formidable force. In an enduring empire, their evolution would continue. We might see a blend of the professional, heavily armored legions of the Principate with the more mobile, cavalry-heavy forces that emerged in the later empire. The constant need to defend vast borders against various nomadic groups and rival empires would drive continuous military innovation, perhaps leading to advanced siege technology, better logistics, and even early forms of standardized military training and tactics across the empire. The military's role in imperial stability would remain paramount. Rome historically dominated the Mediterranean, calling it Mare Nostrum, or our sea. An unbroken empire would undoubtedly maintain and expand this naval supremacy. Advanced shipbuilding techniques, perhaps even incorporating early steam concepts, could lead to a powerful, global Roman navy. This would facilitate trade, rapid troop deployment, and exploration. Imagine Roman fleets patrolling the Atlantic, exploring the Americas centuries before Columbus, or establishing trade outposts in Southeast Asia. This would project Roman power far beyond its land borders, transforming global maritime history. Historically, Rome was a hub of an expansive trade network spanning Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, with connections extending to India and China via the Silk Road. In an unbroken empire, these networks would not only endure but likely intensify and expand. Stable imperial control would secure trade routes, reduce banditry, and standardize currency, fostering greater economic integration. Imagine Roman merchants establishing permanent settlements along the Indian Ocean, or forging direct maritime links with China, exchanging goods, technologies, and ideas on an unprecedented scale. This would create a truly globalized Roman economy. The economic stability of a continuous Roman Empire would hinge on its ability to integrate its vast and diverse provinces. This would involve a sophisticated system of taxation, resource allocation, and market regulation. The absence of the medieval feudal system, which fragmented European economies, could mean a more unified and dynamic imperial market. Advanced agricultural techniques and resource management would be crucial to feed a growing population and fuel industrial development. The Roman peace, Pax Romana, would extend indefinitely, providing a framework for long-term economic prosperity and infrastructure investment. Historically, Rome struggled with the vastness of its borders. An enduring empire would face a critical choice: consolidate its existing, formidable frontiers like Hadrian's Wall or the Limes Germanicus, turning them into impregnable lines of defense, or resume expansion? The latter could see Roman influence push into northern Europe, sub-Saharan Africa, or further into Asia. This decision would dramatically impact its military doctrine, resource allocation, and interactions with neighboring civilizations. Each expansion would bring new cultures, new resources, and new challenges into the Roman sphere. If Rome chose expansion, or simply extended its influence through trade and cultural assimilation rather than conquest, the concept of a Roman world could extend far beyond its historical boundaries. Roman law, Latin language, and Christian faith would spread across continents, perhaps preempting the rise of distinct European colonial powers. The empire could become a global hegemon, integrating diverse peoples under a singular, if often challenging, Roman identity. This would create a truly multi-ethnic, multicultural, yet Roman-dominated, planetary civilization, dramatically different from our own fragmented history. Roman cities were marvels of engineering and planning, with paved streets, aqueducts, sewers, and public baths. Historically, many declined after the empire's fall. In our alternate timeline, these urban centers would not only endure but thrive and expand. Rome itself, Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and other major cities would become vast metropolises, perhaps reaching populations unheard of before the Industrial Revolution. Urban planning would continue to evolve, integrating new technologies and architectural styles, while maintaining the characteristic Roman emphasis on public amenities and sanitation. The continuous development of Roman engineering would transform cities. Imagine multi-story buildings becoming more common, extensive public transportation systems, and advanced waste management. The network of Roman roads would expand and be maintained for millennia, connecting a truly global empire, facilitating rapid communication and trade. Such infrastructure would support immense populations and sophisticated economies, far surpassing the urban capabilities of the medieval period in our historical timeline. This would create a truly advanced pre-modern urban civilization. Roman cities, with their aqueducts and sewage systems, already possessed superior public health infrastructure compared to later medieval cities. In a continuous empire, these systems would be continually improved, potentially leading to a better understanding of hygiene and disease prevention. Combined with advanced medical knowledge preserved from Hellenistic times and potentially new discoveries, the overall public health and life expectancy of Roman citizens could be significantly higher. Education, too, would thrive, with public schools and libraries across the empire, fostering a highly literate and educated populace. Even an eternal empire would face profound internal challenges. The sheer scale of governance, the logistical demands of feeding and administering a global population, and the cultural diversity within its borders would present constant tensions. Maintaining unity across disparate peoples over centuries would require exceptional political dexterity. Discontent among provincial populations, or powerful regional governors, could spark rebellions or civil wars, forcing the empire to constantly adapt its political structures and methods of control to ensure long-term stability and prevent fragmentation. While the traditional barbarian threats might have been absorbed or repelled, new external challenges would inevitably arise. As the empire expanded its reach, it would encounter previously unknown civilizations or powerful emerging empires on its new frontiers. Would it face a powerful Chinese empire across Central Asia, or advanced civilizations in the Americas? These encounters could lead to periods of intense warfare, cultural exchange, or even technological competition, preventing any true stagnation and pushing Rome to continually innovate its military, diplomatic, and scientific capabilities. A continuous, technologically advanced Roman Empire would also have significant environmental impacts. Expanded agriculture, mining, and eventually industry would place immense strain on natural resources. Deforestation, soil erosion, and pollution would likely be widespread, potentially leading to ecological crises. Would Roman engineering find solutions to these problems, or would the empire become a victim of its own success, facing resource depletion or irreversible environmental damage? The scale of impact would far surpass what ancient civilizations historically experienced, requiring innovative solutions or facing ecological collapse. The intellectual heritage of Greece, assimilated and preserved by Rome, was foundational. In an enduring empire, philosophy, mathematics, and natural sciences would likely see continuous development. Would a Roman Enlightenment emerge centuries earlier, fostering critical inquiry and empirical methods? This could accelerate the scientific revolution, leading to a deeper understanding of the natural world and potentially unlocking new technologies faster than in our timeline. The vast network of Roman institutions would serve as centers of learning and research, facilitating the exchange of knowledge across continents. Roman society was highly stratified, with a clear hierarchy from senators and equites to plebeians and slaves. An enduring empire would likely retain some form of this social structure, though perhaps modified over centuries. Would slavery gradually fade due to technological advancements making it less necessary, or would it persist in new forms? The integration of new peoples might also lead to a more complex social mosaic, with challenges to traditional Roman citizenship. The tension between rigid class structures and the need for innovation and social mobility would be a defining feature. The Roman Empire historically was a melting pot of cultures, yet it exerted a powerful Romanizing influence. In an unbroken empire, would this process of cultural homogenization continue, potentially leading to a singular, dominant Roman identity across its vast territories? Or would the sheer scale and diversity foster a form of multiculturalism, where local traditions and identities were largely preserved under the Roman umbrella? This balance between unity and diversity would be crucial for long-term stability, constantly negotiated through language, religion, and administrative policies. The concept of Pax Romana, Roman peace, signified a long period of relative stability within the empire's borders. In our hypothetical world, this Pax Romana would be extended indefinitely, creating centuries, perhaps millennia, of uninterrupted development within a vast territory. This profound stability would allow for unprecedented advancements in arts, sciences, and societal organization. However, it also raises questions about external relations. Would this peace extend outwards, or would the empire maintain its peace through the forceful subjugation of all potential rivals, redefining its imperial role? The collapse of the Western Roman Empire is often associated with the onset of the Dark Ages in Europe, a period characterized by fragmented political authority, economic decline, and intellectual stagnation. In a continuous Roman Empire, this Dark Age would simply not occur. The vibrant intellectual life, trade networks, and centralized governance would persist, allowing European development to follow a much more linear and accelerated path. This fundamental absence would reshape the entire course of Western civilization, from the Renaissance to the Enlightenment, which might occur much earlier or in dramatically altered forms. The fragmentation of the Roman Empire was a crucial factor in the eventual emergence of European nation-states. In an unbroken empire, this process might never fully materialize, or at least be significantly delayed. Instead of competing kingdoms, we might see powerful provinces or federal states within the Roman system. The concept of singular national identity, based on language, ethnicity, or shared history, might be subsumed by a broader Roman identity. This would profoundly alter the geopolitical landscape of Europe and the world, creating a vastly different map of global powers. Ultimately, an enduring Roman Empire would have led to a modern world vastly different from our own. Imagine a world where Latin remains a dominant global language, where Roman law forms the basis of international jurisprudence, and where engineering feats rivaling or surpassing our own are centuries older. This Roman modernity might be characterized by highly centralized, perhaps even authoritarian, governance, but also by widespread public infrastructure, advanced urban planning, and a deep respect for classical learning, albeit through a Roman lens. The very concept of progress would be uniquely Roman. A key tension in this alternate history is whether a continuous empire would favor continuity over revolutionary change. Would Roman society, in its quest for stability, actively resist disruptive innovations that challenged its social or political order, thus slowing progress? Or would the very pressures of maintaining a vast empire necessitate constant adaptation and innovation? This balance between conservative tradition and progressive necessity would define its trajectory. The investigative lens suggests that even enduring empires must constantly evolve, or face eventual, perhaps internal, collapse. Regardless of its hypothetical trajectory, the idea of Rome, as a universal empire of law and order, has profoundly influenced Western civilization. From the Holy Roman Empire to modern republics, its echoes are inescapable. Our exercise in alternate history reveals that the actual collapse was not just an end, but a catalyst for new beginnings. In a world where Rome never fell, those beginnings would have been suppressed or reshaped. The very concepts we take for granted today, like nation-states or specific languages, might never have come to be. The absence of the Roman Empire's collapse would mean the loss of countless historical trajectories that shaped our reality. The specific evolution of medieval Europe, the Crusades, the Renaissance as we know it, the Reformation, and the Age of Discovery might all be erased or dramatically altered. The cultures, languages, and political systems that emerged from the ashes of Rome would simply not exist. This highlights the profound butterfly effect of such a monumental what-if, underscoring how deeply intertwined historical events are, and how precarious our own present reality truly is. Ultimately, a world where the Roman Empire never collapsed would be a world of pervasive Roman order, law, and culture. It wouldn't necessarily be a utopia, but rather a civilization shaped by Roman virtues and vices, triumphs and challenges, on an unprecedented scale. The investigative journey into this what-if scenario allows us to appreciate the delicate balance of historical forces and the profound impact of continuity versus discontinuity. It forces us to confront the origins of our own political, linguistic, and technological landscapes, and to imagine a path not taken. To summarize our findings on politics, an enduring Rome would likely have shifted from a purely imperial structure towards a more federalized system. This system would be underpinned by a continuously evolving Roman law and a formalized mechanism for imperial succession, significantly reducing the internal strife that plagued historical Rome. This stability would enable a focus on long-term governance, possibly creating a vast, integrated political entity unlike any single nation-state we know today, profoundly affecting global power dynamics and the very definition of governance. Regarding technology, the preservation of Roman engineering prowess and the potential development of curiosities like Heroeolipile could have spurred an industrial revolution centuries earlier. This would transform Roman industry, transportation, and communication, potentially leading to an early form of the printing press and steam power. While the incentive of slave labor might have initially slowed some innovations, the sheer demands of a vast, continuous empire would eventually necessitate efficiency, pushing the boundaries of Roman scientific and technological capabilities beyond anything seen in our historical timeline. The continuous Roman Empire would solidify Latin as the dominant lingua franca across its vast territories, preventing the rapid divergence into distinct Romance languages. This would foster a greater linguistic and cultural cohesion, with Latin potentially becoming a global language of diplomacy, science, and trade. While regional variations would exist, the overarching Roman identity would be much stronger. This unified linguistic and cultural landscape would have dramatically altered the development of European and global civilizations, creating a world where Roman thought and expression were universally understood. A unified Roman Empire would likely mean a unified, state-sanctioned Christianity with a single doctrinal authority, potentially preventing the East-West schism. This dominant faith would permeate all aspects of Roman life, with paganism largely suppressed. Socially, the stratified Roman hierarchy would likely endure, albeit with potential evolutions regarding slavery and citizenship for integrated populations. The empire would constantly navigate the tension between maintaining traditional structures and adapting to the demands of a diverse, expanding, and technologically advancing society. The Roman legions would continue their evolution, integrating advanced tactics and technology to defend ever-expanding borders. Naval power would be crucial, extending Mare Nostrum into a truly global naval dominance, facilitating exploration and trade across oceans. This military might would underpin an expanded Pax Romana, but also confront new geopolitical challenges and rivals. The empire would be a constant, formidable military presence, defining global power dynamics for millennia, forcing other civilizations to adapt to its omnipresence or be assimilated into its sphere. The question of what if the Roman Empire never collapsed is more than a thought experiment, it's a testament to the profound impact Rome had on our actual history. Its collapse was not merely an ending but a pivotal turning point that opened pathways for entirely new civilizations, languages, and political structures to emerge. Our investigation has revealed a plausible, albeit speculative, world shaped by Roman continuity, a world of persistent order, advanced infrastructure, and a global reach that redefines the very foundations of Western and global civilization as we understand it. Thank you for joining us on this investigative journey through a path not taken.